Subwoofers and audiophiles. What do you think? Does that work? Well, not always, but with this subwoofer, that's what I'm reviewing today, the KEF KC62, you know, this could be the one. This could be the one that puts you over the line. You're like, I don't know, subwoofers are for home theater and explosions and stuff. I want a sub for music. That's what some of you are thinking, right? This could be the one. It's got a lot going for it. First of all, it looks beautiful. I mean, it's elegant. It's kind of like, it's a match in a way to the KEF LS50. That's what I thought when I first saw it. And it's funny because when I reviewed the LS50 Meta not many months ago, I said, shouldn't you guys make a matching subwoofer for this thing? Well, they knew this was coming, but they couldn't say. But anyway, so here it is, the matching sub. But don't get the wrong idea. It's not just for LS50s. It works with any speaker. But that's where I started. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I want to tell you a little bit about the subwoofer itself. First of all, it's really tiny. It's about a 10-inch cube, but it weighs close to 31 pounds. It's very, very solid feeling. So let's take a look inside. I just want to show you the inside so you can see the way the drivers are arranged. And they call this unicore technology, that the voice coils for the two drivers are concentric to each other. That's kind of cool. There's no vibration. Well, they're force canceling, those two drivers, so when you put your hand on the cabinet, you won't feel a lot of energy coming from it when you're playing like some very low bass stuff. The electronics inside are Class D, 1000 watts, 2 times 500 watts, to put it another way. It comes in black, carbon black, or mineral white that matches the new finishes on the LS50s. Again, you could use it with other speakers, but if you want a matching setup, there you go. I also like that there's EQ settings that optimize the sub's response for different room placement strategies, like in the corner, on a wall, out into the room, even inside a cabinet, which sounds nutty to me. What could go wrong there? And then the final setting is apartment, which reduces the low bass output of the subwoofer, so it's a little less subwoofing. So you don't drive your neighbors crazy. But maybe it would be better to think of that as a night switch. So when you're playing tunes at night and you don't want to disturb your neighbors, you put it in an apartment setting. There you go. Now that's an actual physical switch. It would have been nice if that was available as an app on your phone, that you can control those EQ settings or control the volume of the sub or the low pass filter on the sub via app. But no, you can't do that. There is an optional wireless adapter for the sub that costs, I think, $199. But let's look at the back panel and see what the connectivity suite looks like. Well, of course, there's RCA inputs. That would be like the natural way you'd use this sub. The KC62 does have speaker level inputs. That it does. But they're not particularly useful. And I like speaker level inputs. I used them on my REL subwoofers for years and years, and they work great. I know some audiophiles feel weird about it, but if your preamplifier does not have a sub output or 2 main outputs, it's kind of a pain in the ass to hook up the subwoofer via the RCA line level inputs. That's where the speaker level inputs come into play. Speaker level inputs mean that it's running off of your main power amp. It's not taking any power from your power amp, it's just using it for signal, and you use wires to hook it up. And this is the block this tiny little thing. Oh my God, it's a massive pain in the ass to use. I didn't actually do it on this one, but I've done it on 1 or 2 other subs that work this way. And it does work, and it can sound great, but you'd have to have more patience than I do to actually go through this one more time. But anyway, it's possible. That's what I'm saying. As for setup, it was a breeze for me because I already know the best spot on my room to put a subwoofer, which is directly behind and to the left of the left speaker. I use the RCA inputs, and I was driving them from my past Labs XP30 preamp, which happens to have 2 main outputs, so that was super simple. I set the low pass on the KC62 to 50 or 60 hertz. I was going back and forth. Both work perfectly well. And I diddled around a little bit with the volume level on the KC62. I prefer to run subs quieter than louder. In other words, I don't want to call attention to the output of the subwoofer. And literally within 5 minutes of putting it in place and making the connections, I had the sound perfectly dialed in. And when I say perfectly dialed in, I mean that I was not aware that there was any bass coming from the KC62. It makes it, when you get it just right, it appears that all the bass is coming from the main speakers. And that's what was happening. And it was fantastic. I mean, it just let these speakers, the LS50s, bloom. I mean, they just opened up. The soundstage got bigger and deeper. Yes, there was more bass, but it's one of these things about great subs is they don't just do bass. When the synergy is happening, you just feel a greater sense of space and depth, more room sound from the recordings. It's all good. Let's put it that way. Well, of course, the LS50 KC62 combination was a piece of cake. Worked so well, so easy to do, nothing to it. But that was too easy. That's like taking candy from a baby. So I said, I gotta use the sub with some other speakers. And luckily I have some here. So the first one I hooked up after the LS50 Meta was the Dyne Audio Heritage Special. Great, just disappeared. KC62 was rocking my world and the setup was super easy. And the third speaker I used was the Graham Chartwell LS6, very British sounding stand mount speaker that I'm going to be reviewing very shortly. Again, nothing to it. The blend was super easy to do. So what I'm going to be talking about here is basically how the KC62 just merged, let's use that word, just merged with these speakers and made them sound like bigger speakers because they could make more bass, but also just more open sounding speakers with that additional, let's say, foundation coming from the KC62. You guys know the TV series Mr. Robot. Mac Quayle, he does the scores for that show. And it's very synth-heavy music. And I don't just mean heavy in like deep bass, I just mean it's mostly synth. And he uses a lot of very, very, very deep bass passages. And these three speakers, the LS50 and the Heritage Special and the Chartwell LS6, they don't really need to be used with a subwoofer. But when I added the sub, that low end just throbbed and shook the room, and there was a visceral energy to the music that the speakers on their own can't really deliver. And it's not just the deep bass, it just opens it up. Yeah, so once I had that low bass foundation, I missed it when it wasn't there. You know, there was a period of adjustment when I was listening to these speakers again without the sub, because I'm reviewing the speakers not with the sub. So I had to listen to them a lot on their own, and then I put the sub in to do this review, and I got used to hearing it, and then when I took it out, it's like, I kind of missed the sub. Another album that came in handy was Aphex Twin's Selected Ambient Works Volume 2, which is, as the title implies, ambient. But again, he doesn't use bass quite the same way that Mac Quayle uses in Mr. Robot. It's more subtle than that. So it's just sort of there. It is ambient, low energy in a lot of the Aphex Twin music, but it's just there. And again, it doesn't call attention to itself. It's not screaming, it's not pounding your chest or anything. It's not that kind of feeling. But it's very, very effective when the KC62 was in the system. Now, of course, I also played the obvious. I played organ music with, the organ going, it's like to the center of the earth. Then there's Thin Red Line, the score of the movie by, I think, Hans Zimmer, and it opens with this very, very, very deep, low, like rumbling sound. And over most speakers, you're just sort of barely aware that it's there. But when you have a good subwoofer in the system, you know the difference. It's just sort of textural. It's textural bass. It's not just like a throbbing sound. It's got nuance. It's got some some texture to the bass that I just love. So yeah, I played all the usual suspects of, you know, wham, bam, sock you kind of bass, and that's the thing, the KC62 does that stuff really well. But I admit, I did not use it for any home theater stuff at all. Didn't use it in that context. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out that probably the best way to use subwoofers for music systems is to have stereo subwoofers, one for the left channel, one for the right channel. Now, the way I'm using it, it combines left and right channels, and it comes out of that one subwoofer, which works fine, especially when you're crossing over really low, certainly under 80 hertz. You can get away with it. But once you get into it, you might really feel like, you know, I should get a second one so I can have stereo subs. And when I've done it, back in my home theater reviewing days, stereo subs are really, really good. There you have it. My name is Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. If you already have, thank you so much for doing that. I don't thank you guys enough. I really don't. So thanks. And you could also check out my Patreon at patreon.com/audiophiliac. There's a link to that below. You could also check out my t-shirts. I haven't been plugging the t-shirts much. I have t-shirts and mugs and a face mask with Audiophiliac stuff on Teespring, and that's also definitely below. And speaking of things that are below, the complete system of all the stuff I use is in the description box of pretty much every review I do. At least they have been for the last few months. What else? Well, we got playlists. We got playlists for electronics reviews and speaker reviews and headphone reviews and, of course, music reviews plus interviews. You know, the one I did with my friend Robert, who built my Amp Camp amp for me and one for himself, actually two for himself. That's a fun interview, so you should watch that one, and I will link to that like right there. And that's it. I think my work here is at last complete. So thank you again for watching, and I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.